Awesome. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And yeah, just want to echo how excited we are to have you all here today with us and to join this conversation with Lieutenant Lynch from Fredericksburg. Again, like Rebecca said, my name is Jessica Tyler. I'm a retired deputy chief out of New Mexico and our current general manager of professional standards suite here at Power DMS. And with me today is Lieutenant Aimee Lynch, like she said, from Fredericksburg. And Fredericksburg was actually one of our early adopters of PSS, and Lieutenant Lynch has been tasked with really taking on the whole project of adopting this new software. And we thought it could be really valuable to kind of talk about their experiences with the utilization of the software and how it's helped kind of shape their overall professional standards practices within Fredericksburg. So Lieutenant, thanks again so much for being with us today, and I'll give you a few moments to introduce yourself as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm Lieutenant Aimee Lynch. Again, I work for the Fredericksburg Police Department here in Virginia. I've been with Fredericksburg for about 16 years now and been in the professional standards office for about 3 years now. And I've done a variety of things here at our police department, from patrol to detective division to the public information officer position, community outreach, and now internal affairs. And I'm really excited to be here, and I thank Jessica and all of Power DMS for giving me this opportunity.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Lieutenant. So just want to do a quick overview of kind of what we're going to cover today, what's going to kind of guide our conversation. We're going to start off with a poll question just to gauge some of the attendees to find out what pain points you've had in professional standards. And I'll just share this real quick. I'm sure, Lieutenant, you can see or share this point of view. I know for me, my time in professional standards really helped me make sense of all of the other purposes of the rest of the agency. So it really opened my eyes to how things like policy and training and hiring and recruiting and discipline and all of those things really shape the culture and the day-to-day operations really of an agency. So really important. So we'll start with that poll question to kind of gauge what are some of the pain points that our attendees are dealing with in their professional standards divisions right now. And then we're going to talk about our legacy systems and potential process gaps that those legacy systems or just our paper processes have in them. And then also just meeting those modern policing challenges. And, you know, I talk to people all the time, and we're asked to do so much more in law enforcement now than we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago. So it's always changing and more pressure on our agencies. So how can we kind of meet those modern challenges with tools that make our jobs more efficient? And then we'll talk a little bit about, like, what does life look like when we have the right tools? And so, Lieutenant, really excited to hear you share kind of how things have evolved for you guys as an agency. And then we'll leave a little bit of time at the end for any Q&A. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with our poll question. We'll let Rebecca launch that poll, and we'll allow you guys, and then we'll share the results here momentarily. So we'll give you guys about 30 seconds for that. Awesome. And Rebecca, if you want to maybe share the results, I actually can't see them for some reason on my end. I think since I'm sharing. Let me just try to go. Okay, so it looks like I can see them now here. So it looks like you guys are able to see them, hopefully. So 50% of you guys are still using paper processes, PDFs, or email chains to do your workflows. And then 50% of you all are not sure, but do agree that it shouldn't feel this hard. So pretty split there. And I think that that's, you know, definitely what we hear a lot from agencies. And so if you are one of those agencies still using paper, don't feel shamed. It's something that we run into more often than you would think with the use of technology these days. But I think that sometimes, especially when it comes to professional standards, operations, we're so worried about the integrity and confidentiality of those processes that we tend to still think that maybe paper is just a safer route when it can cause us issues later on. So thank you all for participating in that poll, and good to get a sense of kind of where you guys are dealing with things. So with that, Lieutenant, let's just jump right into kind of where your old processes or systems kind of fell short. I know that some of the things that we've talked about generally kind of fall into these three categories that you can see here listed here, like slow down reviews, things kind of maybe getting lost or kicked back and forth for corrections, not maybe knowing where things are at, having to have workarounds just because the processes weren't smooth, and then not having good visibility into where things are at or really what things look like as a whole in operations for professional standards. So let's take a few minutes and kind of talk through those different points here.
Yeah, for us, when I came into professional standards, with the system we had, we kind of did a little bit of both. Like, everybody would give me these huge stacks of investigations of papers, and I'd have to scan them in, attach them. It was taking me forever to do this. And then, well, of course, in the process of scanning these papers in, then someone would find something else that belonged with this investigation, or I would recognize that something was missing and have to go try to track this piece of paper down. We did have a system, but it was a combination of both. Like, we had a system, still, like most of the people that voted during the poll, we're still doing PDF and paper too. And it really just took us forever, whether it was something from reviewing a use of force up to a professional standards investigation. And, that alone just causes stress on people to know that this is, and we're not a very large agency. So in my opinion, it was taking way too long and causing so much undue stress on people just waiting to find out that their use of force was found within policy. So that put a lot on not just me having a large workflow, but also stress on people that worked here. So
yeah, and I think that that's something that oftentimes other employees in the agencies don't always have an appreciation for, the fact that, like, we do care about their well-being and trying to reduce that stress. And so anytime we can get them feedback faster, because we know that those review processes inevitably cause stress and kind of, they almost feel like things are being held over their head, or they're being, waiting in limbo. And so not having the ability to give our employees feedback in a timely manner does create, a more stressful environment for them.
Right. And I knew that coming in, like, I've been there, right? Like, I had the force and would wait weeks and think, like, is something going on? Did I do something wrong? So that was one of my goals coming up here, was to get a quicker response to, our patrol officers and let them know, and not just like, see them in the hallway and say it was good, but give them a personal response that you're good, the use of force was within policy.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think you talked there a lot about kind of just those slow down reviews. And then inevitably, I feel like when things aren't working in a smooth fashion, we are in law enforcement, it's like we're there to fix things, right? So then we're going to start developing our own workarounds to try to fix that process. And then you end up having inconsistencies in your processes, which is another problem, or can be, another pain point for an agency. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when you don't have something that's consistent, right? Like you mentioned, people make workarounds to make it easier, or, flow easier for them, which no fault of their own, right? So then you have someone that's doing it this way because they found this workaround, and then you have another person that's submitting something this way, which is totally different than this one. And so everything was kind of all over the place, and nothing was consistent, other than, yes, they were submitting the use of force for review, but there were things missing on this way because something didn't work the way they were trying to do it, so they did it this way. So there's just a lot of workarounds that just nothing was consistent across the board, which again, would cause me to have to go back and try to find something that was missing, or have them redo it to fix it to match the way that it was originally set up to work. And it just, that alone just causes frustration for everybody, not just me. I'm happy to help anybody that, works here with anything, but it causes frustration when they, people feel like, yep, got the report submitted. And then, a couple weeks later, I come back and I'm like, no, you got to do it this way. So it just caused a lot of frustration for everybody.
Yeah. I think another one of the things we hear from customers, and I know you and I have had this conversation as well, but having a lack of visibility into kind of where things are at as well. So it's hard for you, it was probably hard for you initially to kind of have visibility into where could some of those things being, especially when there's workarounds in place. Where are things at? How can I help push things along in the workflow, or to make sure that we're getting quicker review and resolution for our reviews? And that lack of visibility can be problematic as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could have one person says, oh, I did submit it, and then you go to whoever the next person is that's supposed to be reviewing whatever it is, and they're like, I didn't get that, or I sent it back weeks ago. So there was no real visibility to see like, okay, it went to the next person, got kicked back because they forgot this, or needed to add, another report to it. And I couldn't see it, and I have someone that I have to answer to on where these reports are at, and reviews are at. And so it was just really hard, and having to try to touch base with people because, our patrol officers don't work every day, all day. So, when they're off, of course, I don't want to bother somebody when they're off and enjoying their days off. So it just made it hard where there was nothing I could do. It would just sit stagnant until they came back, and then I could follow up saying, hey, where is this? I need this. And then I'm on another hunt for the next thing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think somebody put a comment in the chat about this too, or a question about, the lack of visibility also gives us lack of clarity into key trends like we have here as one of the bullet points. And I think that that's one of the areas where I really wanted to be able to try to have an impact, because I think, that we do ask so much more of our law enforcement employees, whether it's a line level employee or administration now, to do these reviews. But it's like, are we doing them? Does the review mean anything? Does it mean anything to the employee who used force? Does it mean anything to the agency? Are we actually collecting that data? And I know we'll talk about this some more later, but making our reviews meaningful. And so we really want to be able to have those reviews drive our decision making within our organization. And that's really hard to do when you don't have visibility into those reviews. So yeah, great comment there from one of the attendees. Thank you for that. So the other thing is, sometimes we don't necessarily think about what our hidden costs of are, caused by having those gaps. So when we have process gaps, we're not necessarily always thinking within our agency of like, what is this costing us in the different areas of, especially, and here in particular for professional standards. So, our supervisors being pulled in multiple directions, like we've talked about a little bit already, those frustrations and the limits of our officers. Again, we're asking them to do, more and more administrative work every day, along with just the regular stress of answering their calls for service. Those delays in our process reviews can sometimes then turn into bigger tasks or a bigger issue if they're not caught in a time-effective manner. And then also when we're doing things like trying to feed information into an early warning system, if we're missing things, are we doing justice to those systems and to our employees? And so I think you had maybe a couple of things that you wanted to share around these points from your experience.
Yeah, so with the early warning indicators, in our old process, we had an officer that went to some pretty significant calls back to back to back, and we had a system, but it was really only capturing professional standards investigations or uses of force. There was nothing else captured there. So no calls for service, nothing. So when that officer went to those calls, obviously our CAD system has that, but it was more reliant on the supervisor to know this person went to X, Y, and Z. Maybe we should do a check-in with this person. And if that person's supervisor was off, obviously we would have a substitute supervisor there that doesn't normally work with that person. And we ultimately lost that officer due to the amount of stress that they went through handling those calls. And I tend to think that, like, had we had a better system in place, I think we would have been able to, do a check-in or get resources to help that officer, but we didn't have that. And again, like I said, even though it was in CAD, nobody thought, and it was on memory only really at that point, and it wasn't capturing anything other than use of force. So I really think that, you know, with the changeover to the professional standards suite, we capture a lot more and are doing much better with our officers and early warning in that aspect. And I know I mentioned earlier the frustration. Frustration was very high prior to switching, and now it's not. You know, when you switch to a new program, obviously there's little hiccups here and there, but overall, everybody has, you know, comes up to my office and is like, wow, I really love this. This is amazing. And I know we'll get into more detail a little bit later in this webinar, but the frustration level of supervisors and the workflow process, they love it because they can see all the notes from, you know, from when the process starts all the way to the top if they need to. They can go back in the system and look up officers and what they've been going through. So it's really changed the culture here a lot.
That's awesome to hear. We definitely love hearing that. And like you said, I know we'll talk more about each of the different components here a little bit more in detail as we move into the webinar, but I want to make sure that we come back to that, you know, early warning, kind of just the whole philosophy around it. So we'll talk more about that as we move on, but also like to kind of just do this side-by-side comparison, because I think oftentimes people, when they're looking at making a change, sometimes it's like you're worried about, you don't want to lose what was working well, right? So we have this kind of side-by-side comparison of, you know, what changed and what stayed the same, and really how things have evolved for you guys to work the best for Fredericksburg and be specific to your agency needs. And so, you know, we can talk about any of these bullet points, but I know, especially for you, like it's been one of those things that's come up over and over again, is just how the workflows matched, you know, how you guys need to review things, and you have that flexibility to be able to do that. And then also being able to kind of adopt things at a pace that worked well for adoption. And we'll talk more about that here in a little while as well. But also wanting to make sure that we were able to keep things like keeping language that's, you know, native to your agency. So being able to use terminology that matches your policies and the lingo that you guys speak there at Fredericksburg. So talk a little bit about kind of what things that you guys have changed, what stayed the same, and how that's been beneficial for you guys.
For us, when we implemented this, it was a very, very easy process. You know, I once we had it, I went around to our roll calls, did, you know, a quick walkthrough of the system. And what was even more great, like I did it on their time, you know, didn't force a training on them that was going to take hours. Did this training, they all had access because we already have Power DMS policy at that point. And then this whole program was open to them for a month. And if I wanted it longer, we could have had it open for longer, but the whole program was open to them for a month, and they were able to go in and make up their own use of force, their own vehicle pursuits, you know, canine apprehension reports, and put it through the workflow, through their chain of command, have it come up to me. You know, I would deny some with little notes saying, oh, you forgot this, so that they could see it being approved or denied and coming back down, which I got great feedback on. They loved that they were able to practice when they could, whether it was between calls for service or after court one day. It wasn't a forced training where they're coming in on their day off. It was totally whenever they were available to do it. And they really, really liked that aspect of it. After that month, obviously all the practice uses of force or what have you got deleted out of the system, and then our system went live. But with that, this whole process was super easy for me too. I didn't have to go in and start from ground zero and input all our employees because we already had policy. Everything just migrated over into this platform. Really, the only thing I had to do, like Jessica said, was have the use of force match our policy or our language. And I could pick and choose from drop downs if there was something that, you know, was built into this program that we didn't necessarily want in the report, or we just felt like it was too much extra information. You don't have to use it. So you can make the report as complex as you want or as simple as you want. And again, match your policy, which was really great. And everybody loved that. So very minimal work for me to do. Again, the rollout process was super easy for our agency, and it was not a forced thing. And the staff here really liked it. And
well, kudos to you as well for having a good implementation strategy and being cognizant of kind of the demands, because I think that makes such a big difference, right? When we roll out change for our agencies, taking into consideration their work schedules, or like you said, even doing something like letting them have their practice reports at their pace and kind of more real world than just sitting in a classroom and be like, hey, let's submit this report and let's kick it back. For having it be more organic and real life type training was smart on your part. But great that the system obviously is amenable to being able to have that type of training format.
The other thing I'd like to add, I think what was really nice about them being able to create uses of force or reports in this system is, though I built it to match our language and our policy here at Fredericksburg, there's always going to be something that I miss, right? So I got a lot of great feedback, but I also, someone would email me and say, hey, can you add this to it? Which was super helpful for me because I'm not going to get everything in one shot. So it was really nice because they had buy-in too, and, essentially help build the program too to match what they're doing in patrol for detectives.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, having more of that collaborative process for adoption is great. So again, like we've talked a little bit about this, but again, we have so many challenges, these days in public safety, and being able to meet those challenges in a way that lowers stress on our employees, helps us with transparency and communication with both internally with our employees as well as our external stakeholders, I think is really important. And so that was something important to me in developing the software, is making sure that we were making things, like I said, meaningful and more efficient. And so the 3 different modules, of course, are Power Action, Power IA, and then Power Vitals, which is early intervention. And so do you want to talk a little bit just kind of about how the 3 components together have potentially helped you guys meet those public safety challenges that we have these days?
Yeah, I think for Power Action, again, very simple. It matches our agency very specifically, which is really nice and gives us more options, where before it was, it is what it is, set in stone, and that's where the workarounds kind of came in our old process. This one is very flexible and again matches everything really to a T to our agency and our policies, and is simple to use. Not everybody's a guru at technology, and I think when you make things simple to use, people like that. So the program is very simple. I will say, after the rollout, the first use of force we had come in was by one of our newer supervisors. And as soon as he had it submitted, he called me and he said, this is the easiest program I think I've ever used. It saved me so much time inputting the data, and it gave him options. It wasn't just set in stone, like this is what it has to be and you get no other options, which I thought was amazing and great feedback. And yeah, so everybody loves it. It's super easy to use. It makes, especially when I think most agencies, throughout the United States are very short staffed. We are as well. Being able to go through an action report and be able to get it done quickly before you get called to the next call for service is nice, so that they don't have the stress of this is going to take me hours to submit this, and that they can get it done quick. For the internal affairs part, again, super easy, super simple to use. I love the fact that it connects to the policy side, where before we didn't have that, working relationship with the programs. When you have one and you need to pull a section of a policy, it it does it on its own. It links the policy over into the internal affairs investigation that you have going on and highlights it right there in the program for you so that you know what the allegations are. And you don't have to go back to the policy side and search through all your policies looking for the, one specific section for the allegation. And it really, again, it's easy to use, drop down menus. It's not set in stone, and you have that one option. You have multiple options, and again, very easy to use. What I like about both of them is that I can start working on it, hit save, and come back. If I have to go to a different computer and log in, it's still there, still saved. Where before it was set in stone that you had to sit where you were sitting and really had to almost finish the whole process for it to even be saved. Where this one, if I get started on it, need to go to a meeting or something, I can have it started, saved, and then come back to it an hour later if I need to.
Yeah, just real quick, I'm really happy you called that out, because that was something that was very intentional in the creation of these products, is having an understanding and respect of the fact that it's like people don't get to sit down, they don't have the luxury, right, to sit down and do a whole use of force report or a whole IA investigation. We're going to get called away, sent to another call. Maybe you're on your phone or a tablet or your tough book, or maybe you're at a station at the a computer at the station. But again, being able to access that information from anywhere that you have internet service, essentially, then you can log in to the web app and access that information is a great usability point. I think that is a great, and to me it should be essential, right? Like, to me, we have to provide that accessibility to our employees. But great that that's been a good takeaway for you all.
Yes, absolutely. And just, we have access on our MDTs in the car, so they can do it right there on scene, especially if there's something else still taking place and they're sitting there, they can start it there. And if they need to come back to the building to upload something, then they can come back to the building, but they can at least start it out in the field and then come back later, which has been huge progress where we came.
Yeah, great. Awesome. So let's go, sorry, let's go ahead and we'll switch and we'll kind of delve into the more specifics of kind of each product. And so we'll start off with action, which again, we've been talking about, of course, like your use of force reports, our vehicle pursuits, K9 deployments, etc. And so we've talked about some of these already, but we can go ahead and talk about these other bullet points and just dive a little bit deeper into how it's brought value to your agency.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about starting and editing from anywhere. Like I said, they have access on their MDTs, their phones. If they had tablets, we don't have tablets here, but they could do that as well. And, just like technology, computers go down all the time. So we have the ability to take our desktop computers home if we need to. But it makes it easy because, you have a long shift and you want to go home and you have to go home and you can finish this while sitting on the couch and submit it. So the accessibility to it is really nice, where we didn't have that at all before. It was, you had to be physically here in the building doing it at your desk, at your computer. And then just copy and paste, that option.
Yeah, submit and copy.
Yeah, it's easy.
Which I think is, yeah, and I think one of the, a question we get around this a lot is like, maybe people want to do their vehicle pursuit and their use of force reports together, but there is value in doing them separate so that you have that analytics. Maybe the use of force was good, but the vehicle pursuit was out of policy, or vice versa. And so to be able to take action and separately on those parts of an incident, I think is really crucial. And then also giving us better analytics on that. But we don't want to create additional work for our employees to have to submit extra reports. So being able to copy over everything from their use of force report to their vehicle pursuit, and then just fill out the portion that's specific to that vehicle pursuit, it's a huge time savings, but brings, again, that value to have better visibility, better accountability, and being able to have that data that then will guide our decision making.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, the simpleness and easy use of it is just gold for our agency. And then for the clear visibility for supervisors, they can go in at any time and see the chain of command comments. Prior to having this, I was having to PDF the comments from before and send them out to the supervisors that wanted them, where now they can just see them all the time. They can log in at any time and see the comments. They can go back years and see them then too, which saves me a lot of time from having to download a document and PDF it and then send it through email to somebody that wanted to see the comments from a use of force or any other action report.
Yeah, and I think this is another huge call out in supporting our supervisors and empowering them and enabling them to be good supervisors, right? And to ensure accountability of their personnel and be more involved in the process. But that has to come with some transparency and accessibility to that information within the agency without having to reach out to somebody like you all the time to say like, hey, can I have this information? Because we want our supervisors to hold their people accountable and as well as support them, but really hard for them to do that if they don't have all the information on their employees. And so I think this software is great at supporting that accountability and, like I said, enabling and empowering supervisors to have that information available to them. Awesome. And so then let's go a little bit deeper into IA specifically and just the case management aspect of being able to have, again, all of the portions of your investigation in one place that, you know, brings in information from action and can also send all of this information to early warning as well.
Yeah, again, you know, if something comes up through action that needs to be further investigated, easy just to take that case report and transfer it over into the IA, and there's nothing I really have to do, or if someone else is investigating it, they have to do, because all that information has already been transferred over into an IA case. So, you know, the drop-down menus, the documentation of whatever occurred is already there. It's more just you doing your investigation and adding the extra details that you have for it, which is super easy because that wasn't how we were doing it before. It was a whole new case with all new paperwork and scanning and attaching. So in that aspect, this has made it 10 times easier. And again, with the link to the policy side, and it grabs the specific of the policy. It's not downloading the, you know, the 15-page whole policy into this. It's the specific section that you need. And again, like I mentioned before, the ease of it, of having all the different options and the options that match our agency versus maybe an agency in California that doesn't, you know, have the same rules and policies as we do. And it's really just been so easy to track everything and know where everything is, especially if it's not necessarily myself doing an investigation. Maybe it's, you know, the patrol captain doing the investigation. It's easy for, you know, the chief of police, deputy chief, or myself to follow up and track where everything is at in the process. And it just allows people to understand and know where everything is at. Again, so that we're not causing that undue stress on somebody that's involved in an internal affairs investigation.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think those are all great call outs and things that, again, help us be a healthier organization overall, right? Mm-hmm. And then with vitals, which again, you've talked about this a little bit, but, you know, really was important for us as a company to have a more meaningful early warning system and having that kind of wellness forward approach, or, you know, making sure that, again, we have information that's valuable to supervisors available to them to be able to support their officers or deputies is really important. And I think that's been a big miss with kind of traditional early warning systems. And it's nice to know that, you know, having things like the cat call integration and knowing that I can be alerted to something, or not having to just rely on memory, because at the end of the day, we're humans, right? So we of course know some calls, or again, in our profession, we can kind of start to fall into that trap of like, oh, it's just part of the job, right? But we don't really look at that, how things kind of can compile over time, so that if somebody's been to a string of bad calls, it might not be something that we're aware of, especially if they fall under a different supervisor a few days a week, or again, just human nature. So I think it's really great to have that assistance from a system that can help keep our supervisors informed.
Yeah, no, I love this system. I mentioned earlier our system, our process or system before was only capturing use of force, vehicle pursuits, those action type reports. And really we had set the threshold so it would send me alert saying, you know, Officer X had so many uses of force, but it wasn't capturing anything else. With Vitals, it's connected to our CAD system, so it captures all those incoming calls. And just recently we had it turned on with the AI where it, you know, takes the AI and from the CAD notes processes what was going on in that call, which is such a neat feature. Obviously, many, you know, companies are getting into AI, and I think that sometimes that might be scary for agencies or and IT departments. But honestly, though our IT kind of has our contract for anything, you know, dealing with computers or programs like that, they were all on board with it and thought it was a really neat process, even though they really have nothing to do with law enforcement. But it is a very neat process. It's super helpful. The other thing I like to mention about it is that when you set the, you get to pick the calls that you want in Vitals. So if you want car accidents to be in here, depending on what type of car accident, you can have those in there or not. It's all at your agency's decision. Power DMS doesn't say it's got to be X, Y, and Z. It's your decision and how you want it to alert within that system. So for us, I sat down with the chief and deputy chief, and we went through all our types of calls that we would see and picked it. And the other neat thing about it is that Power DMS went above that, and it wasn't just Power DMS picking like how this would alert or how this would affect an officer. They had psychologists and law enforcement officers sit down and talk about these type of calls and how to pick the thresholds of how it would affect an officer, which I thought was really neat and super helpful, because everything can affect somebody totally different. And you can change those thresholds if you feel like you want to. But moving past that, it really catches everything early, especially for the night shift officers. And you can have the workflow set up however you want, if you want it to go to that officer specific supervisor, or if you, like us, we have a very small agency. So for right now, I get the alerts, and then I kind of send them out to the supervisor just saying, hey, this is what they've been on, if you want to do a check-in. But they all have access to it. They all can see everything. And we work together through that process. So it's really nice that they can go in and see everything too, where before it wasn't captured. And like you mentioned, it was really on memory, or if they checked the call CAD log from the day before that day, it was based off that. But it is it is consistent. It's not, alerts one day and then never again until the, next big one. It's constantly capturing that data, which is extremely helpful.
Yeah, I really am excited about this particular module of the software, just because I do think it's been an area that has been so underutilized as far as, our traditional early warning systems. There's always been like opposing schools of thought. I know that I dealt with this a lot during my time working on the DOJ reform that the Albuquerque Police Department. Even within our monitoring team, some people thought, early warning systems were valuable. Other people did not think they were. We're seeing it become more and more common that states are even adopting legislation that require this. But again, how meaningful is it to just look at, okay, Lieutenant Lynch has had a use of force and 2 complaints in 6 months. Is that really being effective? And so I think Power Vitals really sets us apart in the industry as empowering agencies and supervisors to be able to say, let's look at the employee as a whole and be able to capture and think about just the day-to-day stress of the job, and allow us to then show that we care enough to have a conversation with them and offer them additional support or resources much earlier than it would maybe take for them to hit that threshold in a traditional early warning system. And so I love the fact that you took some time to talk through the use of the CAD integration and AI. And like you said, it can be scary, but we should be working smarter, not harder these days, and kind of taking the human element out of it. Because I can tell you that, I'm kind of still old school law enforcement, even though I think we've made a lot of great progress in being more proactive in helping our employees. There can still be that old school mentality of like, oh, it is just part of the job, or going to these crimes against children calls or death investigations, or just maybe a nasty domestic violence call or a gruesome vehicle crash. Yes, it is part of the job, but there's also stress and effects that has on our employees. And so why would we not want to take that into consideration, to be able to have those conversations? And again, like you said, maybe save somebody's career and provide that longevity to both them as an employee within our agency, but also help our agencies.
And I think I would just like to add, for us, again, kind of the same as Power Action and Power IA, I went to them and I showed them what it looks like and let them see how the process worked, and let them have buy-in by saying, like, do you think this should be in here? Do you think this should be in here? And I think that really helped them not feel like it's like something that, internal affairs is monitoring all the time and we're going to get in trouble for it, because I went to them with it, showed them it, and let them have that buy-in for it on everything that it would be capturing.
Yeah, no, another great way to approach that implementation of it. And again, it's like there's no secrets, right? It's not the super secret box that just Lieutenant Lynch has access to. It is about bringing kind of that visibility, and empowering, like I said, our supervisors with that information. And so then, really bringing all of this information into analytics. And like we talked about it a little bit before, having this information help guide us as an agency. And so making it meaningful, right? I feel like that also makes it less burdensome for our employees to be like, oh, I have to complete this use of force review. Nothing even happens with it, right? It just ends up in an annual report. But when we're actually taking our data from all of our action reports, use of force, vehicle pursuits, taser deployments, officer injuries, all of those types of things, then our internal affairs cases or complaints, our vitals information, and then bringing that into a dashboard or to analytics that then can help, again, just help drive conversations and also allow us to make changes in a meaningful way, or articulate why we're making a change to a policy or why we're doing additional training on this. Again, it just brings value, I feel like, to the work that people are doing. And so, do you have anything that you really want to share on maybe how you guys have used the analytics or the accessibility of the analytics with this?
So for us, like, we're CALIA accredited, so this alone has made at least my portion very easy to give these statistics to our accreditation manager who needs, an annual report that she submits for CALIA. So it's made my life really easy, where before I was literally hand counting uses of force, and hand counting, what weapon was used, or, how many vehicle pursuits we had, which was extremely time consuming. This has made it 1,000 times easier for me, and really for her, because she has it all, that she has access to it as well. So if I was off, she can do it for herself as well for CALIA. And it's laid out very simple and easy to understand. It's not, having to click through a million different pages to find the use of force and then going back this way and trying to click through a bunch of different ones and getting the raw number and then having to count all the rest of the details out. So it really is very easy for not just me, but for all the supervisors that have access to this to use it. And then we give, the report to our head firearms instructor, because she does varying training, not just firearms related, but use of force training as well. So anybody that's an instructor has access to these reports as well, which helps us with training.
Awesome. Yeah, love to hear that you guys are using it in that way. I think we've talked a lot about this already, but because you've woven these points into the conversation throughout today's webinar, which has been great. But I think it's worth calling all of these things out because I think you've done an outstanding job in being kind of that change agent and helping the agency easily move into the adoption of the new software. And so I'll just give you one more chance to add a few more comments if you have anything that you feel like you didn't already cover.
Yeah, like I said, I think for us, we're a smaller agency. I know there's much larger. The two agencies next door to us are much larger than us. For me personally, I like it when I'm included in stuff, you know, that affects somewhere where I work. And I was in patrol at one point in detectives, and they're the ones that are going to be doing the uses of force, not me, or, you know, the vehicle pursuits. So I wanted their input. I wanted them to have a chance to change what I set up. If I missed something, I wanted them to tell me I missed something. If they wanted something added or deleted, I wanted them to be able to have that opportunity to tell me instead of it just saying it coming from internal affairs and that it was my thing. I wanted it to be our thing because I'm not going to be in this position forever. Someone else will come in and take over this position, and I wanted everybody to have a working knowledge of how it worked and have that buy-in for them. And for us, it went really well. Obviously, you know, nobody likes change, but it wasn't like this huge complaint going on at our agency, like, you know,
Right.
We got a new program. There was none of that actually. And, you know, they had fun with it. You know, the reports that they put in were goofy and silly, and, you know, but they enjoyed seeing how the process worked going up the chain and then coming back down the chain. So not only was it, you know, them working to make sure that it was set up correctly, but they had fun with it too. And now that it's implemented, it saved them so much time. And, you know, obviously, once it went implemented, you know, if they hit a hiccup, I always made myself available for, you know, a FaceTime call so they could show me what they couldn't figure out. And it worked, and it's easy, and they love it.
Good. So great to hear. So again, just having kind of like fast forward to today, present time, life with the right tool, just again, kind of highlighting some of these major takeaways of the positive that it's been for your agency.
Again, like the reviews for us are so much, they come up to, all the reviews come to me, and the chief and I review all the uses of force just to make sure that they're within policy and nothing gets stalled. I don't have to go down the hallway and, you know, beg people like, hey, please come on, let's send this up the chain. It gets done, you know, within a day or so. And that way we can let the officer know in person, hey, your use of force was, you know, great within policy, and they can, you know, breathe a little easier, which is nice. Like I mentioned before, we have enough stress as it is in our personal lives and at work. I don't want to be the reason that someone has more stress just because they're worried about a use of force, whether they know they're well within policy or not. I don't want them to have to sit there and worry about it through their shift. Frankly, the fact that everything is in one system is like the best thing in the world to me, because I don't have to toggle between a program over here and then a program over here and it's work. It has really just made everything very streamlined in one place and easy to use. I already spoke with the officer stress is down significantly for our agency, and it shows, and it's easy to show. I can give the chief an update every week, every day, just showing to him that everybody's stress is down. And then obviously we spoke at the beginning about how we used to do it, which was I would get handed a stack of paper to scan in, and which would take me, you know, forever to scan papers in, and then having to label them correctly. And then of course, if I found something lost or, you know, email went to the wrong person or what have you, everything's right there and easily tracked and easily, you know, found in one location versus me having to go over to this side of the building to get something and then come back over this side of the building to scan it in. It's just very easy to use and makes everybody's life a lot easier.
Yeah, and such a big time savings and a stress reducer in and of itself, right? Then if you get like a public records request or a lawsuit and you have to produce all the paperwork, it's like you know exactly where everything is. I love the fact that you called out about like being able to log into one system as well. I know for me, it's like, again, we're asking people to do more and more, and then it's like there's an app for this, an app for that, or a program for this. And having just one login and more functionality out of one place, I think is a great takeaway as well.
I would also, can
So
I
do
add
you,
one more thing? Sorry.
yeah,
I
of
just
course. No.
thought of it. So with this program, you also get links that you can put on your website or social media for a public compliment or a complaint. And that has made a huge difference for us because we can either take those in person over the phone or on paper. We have paper that people can fill out. But now we have QR codes to those links so people can scan them if they come into the lobby. We have them on all our social media and our webpage. And it sends me an alert anytime. I'm the primary person that gets them. If it's a complaint about something minor that I wouldn't necessarily handle, I would pass it down to the patrol division and they can handle it down there and then close it out in the system. Over the weekend, we had a protest and I kept getting these alerts on my phone, and it was an influx of compliments of our agency coming from the people that were out there demonstrating on the side of the road, just thanking our agency, which was really nice because I was able to send those out to the patrol staff that was working that day. So that aspect of that alone has been really amazing for us as well. And the public likes it too, right? Because everybody's going to QR codes and links versus handwriting stuff. So
yeah, no, I'm so happy you gave us that feedback. And again, a situation that could be stressful for a community as well as the agency, right? When we have protests or demonstrations, like you said, and then actually being able to show like, no, it was a positive experience. That also helps. Again, your officers feel like, no, the community does respect us. They do value us. And, to me, that's worth its weight in gold. So that's awesome feedback. I do want to leave a couple minutes for Q&A. We did have a few questions come in via the chat. So one of them was, does the system forward up the chain for action? Yes, absolutely. So whether it's an action report, like your use of force review, the vehicle pursuit, or a complaint or an internal affairs investigation, you can set up those workflows to go through the chain of command for their meaningful review or them to take action as you see fit to, again, match your processes. Another question was, how do we keep the process moving? So for example, if there's a 3-day time limit set on an IA case and the investigator's out, how do you do that? So there is visibility again into that by the dashboard, would show you that that is past due or approaching its due date. And then like the lieutenant could intervene on that and then, assign it to somebody else if somebody was out on leave or something of that nature. So those are a couple great questions. Let's see, where did you place the IA and use of force workflow? So I think if I'm understanding the question, so you can have IA would be separate, but again, if a use of force is found to be during just like the use of force review, if it's found to be out of policy or you think you need further investigation, then essentially you can move that use of force review over to IA for further investigation. Or some agencies might want to have like their IA commander have eyes on every use of force. So you could add the IA commander or that position or role, if you will, into that workflow so that they have a view only essentially of each of those reports so that they have eyes on that report.
I can tell you how ours is set up if that helps. So for use of force, our sergeants will respond to the scene and they start the use of force report in PSS. I have it set up currently that the workflow goes then to their lieutenant and then it goes to the patrol captain, from the patrol captain to the deputy chief, from the deputy chief it comes to me. The chief of police then comes in my office.
I lost your volume, Lieutenant. Can you hear me?
for several weeks, I can go in and force it past the lieutenant to the captain. We can also go in if, the chain of command changes, because they switch shifts or what have you, we can go in and change that workflow easily as well. So you can skip people in the workflow to make it easier to push that on, which we've done several times because people forget someone went on a cruise. So I just go in and push it past the captain and onto the deputy chief.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Lieutenant, for sharing how you guys have utilized that. So we're just about at our hour. Thank you all so much for your time and attention today. Lieutenant, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and all of your insights. Again, kudos to you for taking things on the way you have, and your leadership, I can tell, must be very much valued at your agency. So thank you for the work that you do every day. Again, you guys will all receive a copy